Right, let's talk about tariffs. Specifically, let's talk about Donald Trump's tariffs. Because when you think of calm, considered economic policy, you naturally think of a man who once tried to buy Greenland. Now, in his latest masterstroke of international diplomacy, he decided to slap a whopping 200% tariff on Boeing aircraft. Yes, you heard that correctly, 200%. That's not just a tariff, that's basically telling one of your country's biggest exporters to go fly a kite. This is the kind of policy that makes economists weep into their spreadsheets. The alleged reasoning behind this seems to be part of a broader strategy to, quote, get tough on trade. It's like trying to fix a leaky tap by hitting it with a sledgehammer. The immediate effect on Boeing was, shall we say, less than ideal. The shockwaves rippled through the industry faster than you can say unintended consequences. This move sent a clear message. Unfortunately, the message seemed to be, we are not entirely sure how international trade works, but we are very enthusiastic. Boeing, a company already juggling more problems than a clown at a chainsaw convention, suddenly found itself facing an existential threat from its own government. Now, how did China respond to this particular piece of economic wizardry? Well, imagine you've just been served a truly terrible meal at a restaurant, and the chef then demands you pay triple for the privilege. China's reaction was, in diplomatic terms, the equivalent of that, but on a multi-billion-dollar scale. They didn't just shrug. They retaliated with the kind of speed and precision that makes you think they'd been expecting something monumentally daft all along. First, Chinese authorities told their airlines to stop ordering new Boeing planes. No more Boeings for you. Then, for the planes already on order, China added a delightful little bureaucratic hurdle. Airlines now need special government approval before taking delivery. This isn't just a minor inconvenience for Boeing, it's a gut punch. We're talking about an estimated 5 to 6% of Boeing's entire international order book suddenly in jeopardy. China isn't just any market, it's market. Losing that, or even a significant chunk of it, is less than ideal. Let's delve into the financial funhouse that is Boeing's current predicament, shall we? Following China's retaliation, Boeing's stock price did what any self-respecting stock price would do when faced with catastrophic news. It took a nosedive. It fell nearly 2.4%, which might not sound like the end of the world, but when your company is worth billions, that's a rather large chunk of change vanishing into thin air. Now, it's important to remember that Boeing wasn't exactly skipping through fields of financial daisies this tariff tantrum. The company hasn't actually turned a profit since 2018. That's 6 long years, culminating in accumulated losses of a mind-boggling $35.7 billion on $408 billion in revenue. Boeing expects to continue burning through cash for part of 2025. And here's the kicker. Boeing is the largest exporter in the United States. So a policy that disproportionately harms your biggest exporter? Genius. The vulnerability of Boeing to this tariff chaos is immense, precisely because so much of its business relies on selling things to other countries. Just when you thought this trade kerfuffle couldn't get any more complicated, enter the European Union, stage left, looking rather miffed. The EU, bless their bureaucratic hearts, are not ones to sit idly by while trade wars erupt. They saw Trump's Boeing tariff and essentially said, "Hold my Stella Artois and watch this." The European Commission has threatened to impose its own set of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. aircraft manufacturers, and yes, that absolutely includes Boeing. So Boeing gets hit by its own country, then gets threatened with another hit from across the pond. The scale of these potential EU tariffs isn't exactly pocket change. We're talking a cool 8.5 billion euros, specifically on U.S. aircraft exports. That's a lot of zeros. And it's part of a much larger, rather ominous-sounding package affecting a potential 95 billion euros worth of U.S. exports to Europe. The EU clearly feels that if America's going to play rough, they can play rough too, only with more paperwork and better cheese. This delightful development also threatens to reignite the long-simmering, incredibly tedious Boeing-Airbus trade dispute. But wait, there's more. Because why stop at just antagonizing China and potentially the EU over Boeing when you can threaten a trade war on an even grander scale? President Trump, never one for half measures, also dangled the prospect of a 50% tariff on all European Union goods. 50%. That's not a tariff, that's basically declaring economic war. He initially set a rather dramatic June 1, 2025 deadline for this, which one imagines sent ripples of panic through every European finance ministry. It's the kind of deadline that makes international negotiators cancel their summer holidays. Thankfully, or perhaps just to prolong the agony, this deadline was postponed to July 9, 2025. This came after a phone call between Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, presumably to allow for renewed negotiations. The EU had previously suspended a €21 billion package of its own retaliatory measures after Trump announced a 90-day pause on his Liberation Day tariffs. It's a never-ending cycle of threats, pauses, and more threats. Now you might be thinking, surely there's a grand, clever economic strategy behind all this tariff turmoil. Well, if there is, it's so cleverly hidden that even the experts can't find it. Economist Justin Wolfers, for example, didn't mince his words. He criticized Trump's tariff policy as, and I quote, incoherent and ineffective. That's the polite academic way of saying, this makes about as much sense as a chocolate teapot. Wolfers pointed out that these policies aren't achieving their supposed goals like reducing the budget deficit or solving trade imbalances. Instead, they're just creating a massive cloud of uncertainty and, crucially, harming major exporters like, Boeing. The stated aims of these tariffs often sound quite grand. We're protecting American jobs. We're rebalancing unfair trade deals. But the reality on the ground often looks very different. Instead of a carefully calibrated economic tool, it feels more like policy by whim. One day, it's a tariff on steel. The next, it's a threat against European cars. Then it's a 200% hit on your own aerospace champion. The primary outcome seems to be confusion, instability, and a lot of very nervous businesses. And it's not just Boeing feeling the heat. Trump also threatened Apple with a 25% tariff on iPhones not made in the US. It's crucial to understand that Boeing wasn't exactly a picture of perfect health before these tariffs landed like an anvil dropped from a great height. The company has been grappling with a veritable conga line of problems, making this latest trade-induced headache feel like a particularly cruel joke. Their reputation, once sky-high, has taken a significant battering thanks to a series of deeply concerning operational and engineering issues. Most notably, the tragic 737 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019, which grounded the fleet worldwide and raised serious questions about the company's safety culture. That's not something you just bounce back from. Then, just when you thought they might be turning a corner, a fuselage panel blew out on a 737 MAX in January 2024. Miraculously, no one was seriously hurt, but it did little to inspire confidence. And let's not forget the ongoing sagas with its Starliner spacecraft, which has faced more delays and technical gremlins than a budget airline trying to launch a mission to Mars. It's a track record that suggests a company struggling with some fundamental issues, long before any talk of 200% tariffs. Let's be absolutely clear. China is not just another customer for Boeing. It's a critically important market, projected to account for 20% of global demand for new commercial aircraft over the next 2 decades. Airbus, Boeing's European rival, is capitalizing on this, strengthening its foothold in China. Boeing plans to redirect aircraft intended for China to other markets, but this is no easy task. The long-term strategic blunder of alienating such a key customer cannot be overstated. So what are the broader, long-term consequences of this never-ending tariff tantrum? Well, buckle up, because it's not a pretty picture. The most immediate effect is a thick fog of uncertainty blanketing global trade. Investors who generally prefer stability and predictability to, say, policy decisions made on a whim, are understandably cautious. When the world's largest economy starts behaving like an erratic toddler in a supermarket, throwing things off shelves at random, it makes everyone else very, very nervous. This isn't conducive to long-term investment or stable economic growth. The US-China trade war, of which the Boeing tariff is just the latest explosive chapter, continues to exert immense pressure on Asian nations. Many of these countries are deeply integrated into global supply chains, with components crisscrossing borders multiple times before a final product is assembled. Tariffs throw a massive spanner in these intricate works, forcing companies to rethink sourcing, relocate production, or simply absorb higher costs. And it's not just Asia. Canada, America's friendly neighbor to the north, is reportedly already in the early stages of a recession, partly due to its own trade disputes with the US. It seems no one is immune when the tariff cannons start firing,